So I was in planning consultancy for 7 years. So that's where I started when I graduated. I'd done a lot of different sectors in terms of tourism, commercial, house, and done a lot of retail. And it wasn't necessarily an area I wanted to get pigeonholed into. Housing development, I think, lends itself to be a lot broader.
In terms of the variety? Or
in terms of variety, but
Yeah.
also how much you get to be involved in a scheme.
Okay.
So I will be involved in a scheme from finding the greenfield. So I will find a piece of land, use my planning knowledge, assess it. Will this potentially come forward in 10 to 15 years? Yes. Write to the landowners, negotiate terms, agree a price. But take it a step back. You actually get to see it all the way through.
Okay.
So you've got this site that then you have to work with the local authority, demonstrate why it's deliverable, why it should be suitable for housing, and why it is suitable for housing. You work on every aspect of the scheme. So I think as a planner, it's actually broadened my knowledge and expertise as a planner, being involved in that side of things. You're not just preparing the planning application and submitting it and then passing it back to your client. We are the client. So it involved in every single step, cradle to grave.
How does that conversation start then with the landowner? You've identified the land that you think has got potential. So you write to the landowner.
Really as simple as that. So, and normally letters, because we deal with a lot of farmers and still people that don't really deal a lot with email. I mean, we work, and that's another part of my job that I absolutely love, meeting all sorts of different people from different backgrounds. Who don't, and actually educating them on the process and land acquisition. So simple as that. Write a letter to a landowner, just say, can we meet? Are you interested? I think the land has potential, and then start the conversation.
Who is it that has inspired your persuasive skills? Maybe this is a childhood thing, maybe it's a university thing, I don't know, but where do you think that started?
Yeah, that's a tough one actually, because my career was quite organic. I started out when I was about 10 or 11. I was doing an art badge at Girl Guides, and I met a lady through the examination process, and her daughter was an architect, and she talked a lot about it to me, and it was something that really sparked my interest. I'd always been really... I always loved art. I loved the built environment. I loved buildings. So that fascination just sort of grew. And from that moment, everything that I picked at school, my GCSEs, my A-levels, were all around becoming an architect. And the process to become one was to go to university at the time to do architecture, which I did. So I think I also got some quite odd career advice as well. So when I was about 15, one of the teachers, I went to an all-girls grammar school. One of the teachers, I think, was quite traditional, quite old school. And she said to me, why would you want to go into a male-dominated career? And for me, I'd been focusing on this for so long, what felt so long when you were at school. And I just thought, that's just a really odd thing to say. That's just not encouraging at all. That's not persuasive. That's, the contrary. There was no other suggestion what you might want to do.
Oh, so it was just a flat out.
It was just a flat out, just very, very odd thing to say. I had a very, very supportive design and technology teacher, actually, and at the time I was doing a project that was quite built environment based. So I'd even picked like projects and things so I could research into all these things that I was really interested in. And I think if it wasn't for her, maybe I would have questioned it more, but I don't remember really thinking, oh, I'm not going to do that. I just kept going. And then the rest is history, really, because I went to university, studied architecture. I really loved it, and I think what I thought it was going to be was, very conceptual, but probably the reality was you get less than 1% of qualified architects actually working on the really fantastic, amazing Architects Journal schemes. And I think one day it just dawned on me that I might be one that might not be one like that, but possibly designing extensions or retail extensions or something like that. Something more common. But I did my part one, and I took a year out in practice, and that was when that was really good, because it was in a small rural practice, so we were doing lots of barn conversions, and I got really involved in the schemes. and I had quite a lot of responsibility, which was great. And I started working with planners on the other side as well. And that was quite interesting because architects and planners, you know, they don't always see eye to eye. And that was really interesting for me because I thought, why is this? I'd always had such a huge fascination with the built environment, and I thought there's something in this. And by that point, I'd actually decided that I still wanted to stay in the built environment, but I didn't necessarily want to be an architect. So I went back to Newcastle after my part one and did an MSc in town planning. And part of my dissertation was actually how architects and planners work in practice.
Okay.
And actually that starts from an educational point of view, that actually architecture students don't necessarily know what planners do and vice versa, and the interconnection between those two areas. It leads back to the importance of actually getting into schools and explaining what sort of careers you can go into, because I think architecture is very apparent. People know what architects are, but there's lots of other professions in the built environment we deal with. I manage very, very large project teams now with a lot of different professionals doing with a different perspective, and that was where my passion for that really started. So looking at maybe the differences in the education and what could potentially happen with the educational system in the UK. Anyway, it was obviously a very, very small part of my dissertation or my MSc, but it was something that always really stayed with me. So when I qualified and got a job in Leeds at a town planning consultancy, that was when I knew I would need to win business at some point, but I really, really wanted to make friends in the industry that did other things, not just planning, just so I could get a lot more knowledge about other professionals and how we could all work together better. So I joined the Young Planners YourNet Association, and I joined Women in Property too. And at Women in Property, I started out on their education roadshow scheme, where we would go into schools and talk to 14 and 15-year-olds about a day in the life of what I was doing as a planner, what sort of teams we worked in, to sort of really encourage them to start to research what other areas they could go into. But the importance of raising that really was, to get out and start building your network really early. And those people that I organised that with, I'm still friends and I still work with them now. So the importance of making friends in the industry at a very young age is something that I would advocate for young people.
I'm seeing a theme here, and this theme is around influential women in your life. So the Girl Guide, who was the leader of the Girl Guide, her daughter had an influence on you. Your teacher at school that was also female. And then this combination then of having to balance what one person's saying, what someone else is saying, and then what you're wanting. How do you bring and harmonize that together? Which it seems like your negotiation skills probably started with this teacher at school. It's like, why do you want to do that? That's bonkers. From what you're saying there, she probably did you a favor.
Very much so.
And so that's interesting there, because you're actually the head of Women in Property across the country.
Yes, I'm National Chair of Women in Property.
So what does that mean, being National Chair of Women in Property?
So for 2024 to 25, so it's a 12-month term, I am the voice of women in property. The role is very, very broad though. I lead NSG, which is our national steering group, and that comprises of all the regional chairs. So we've got 7 regional branches, Central Scotland, all the way down to Devon and Cornwall, which is one of our event hubs, which is connected to Southwest. So our coverage of the UK, we've even relaunched a event hub in Northern Ireland, which is very exciting. So part of my role is managing and leading the branches. I myself have been involved in 18 years, mainly in Yorkshire and the North East. So I was regional chair in Yorkshire and North East back in 2014. And since then, been heavily involved in our mentoring programme that we do. And I've led on the student awards nationally for the last 4 or 5 years. So I've been involved at a regional and national level of Women in Property. So that's part of my role, leading the branches, managing the branches, helping them with events, mentoring student awards, their outreach programs, but then also working with our national exec team on partnerships that Women in Property wants to strengthen with other sectors and other organisations in the built environment and property and construction.
It sounds full on.
It's full on. It's very, very busy. There's not a week that is dull. I'm travelling a lot, but that's the best part of the role, though, actually going and spending time with the other branches and the other committees. They're so different because they work in different markets for a start. So what might work very well in Northwest, in Manchester, for example, may not work as well in South Wales. London is very competitive. There's lots of organisations across London and the South East. So we'll tend to do slightly different events in the South East as we will do Yorkshire or Scotland. But that's been the most exciting part of it, because I've been involved in Yorkshire and the North East for so long, so I know what sort of events run well there and what our membership is like, and working between Leeds and Sheffield and Newcastle. But some of our other branches are doing just some amazing things. So Central Scotland have particularly, they've done a really, really good outreach programme with some local schools the last 12 months, and really got into the schools and delivered that. And that's something that has been really, really a real passion of mine this year, to promote our outreach programme and making sure that we're a bit more, we're just rolling that across the organisation a bit more and actually learning from each other and being able to deliver it in different parts of the organisation.
What do you see then as themes in schools when you speak to the girls in school that creates a significant barrier for them to either get into the construction industry, or, similar to yourself, actually be an architect? What themes have you seen?
I think there's a few different things here. I think there's still a little bit of a misconception what sort of roles you can do in property and construction. It's not all site-based. I mean, there's still only 15% of the construction industry are female and only 2% on site. So I think there's a real problem with role models actually in the industry. That's one thing. I referenced knowing what an architect was, the design buildings. I didn't necessarily know what a planner was or a planning consultant was until I'd worked in practice. So I was 21, 22 at the time. I'm not sure that's changed. And that's 20 years ago. Talking to some young ladies now, still at school, still not necessarily being encouraged to have careers in the built environment. House building's another one. Just the lack of knowledge, actually, I think, of what you can actually do, and it's not all site-based. There's lots of roles: land and planning, sales, finance, and it's not just females either. I mean, our outreach programme is very much focused on young people, and there's a real social mobility issue there.
So going back to Women in Property, what's its overall objective?
So Women in Property is in our 37th year, and we've just had our 18th year of the Student Awards programme. So we've been around for a significant amount of time, for coming up to our 40th anniversary. I think it comes down to how relevant we are. Is Women in Property still relevant? And we've thought about that at length and got a watching brief on opening up the membership to all, whether Women in Property as an organisation, as I said, is still relevant. At the moment, we consider it still is. And we've recently done a member survey and asked people whether membership is to be opened up, and it's inconclusive, because there are still areas where women see the benefit of, so take mentoring for example. We have a unique programme at Women in Property. We train about 100 people a year, where we match female to female. It's a role model mentoring programme, female to female, but in the built environment. So it's not planners to planner, architect to architect. And there's a real benefit there. And as far as we know, there's no other programme that matches quite like we do. And there still is such a lack of role models in the built environment. So for me, at various points in my career, and I've had quite a few mentors in my career, male and female. I'd spent 6 years in planning consultancy. I wasn't really sure whether this was something that I wanted to do for much longer. I was doing a lot of retail and tourism, and I really wanted to get more into the housing sector, just get a little bit more experience, but just learn some new skills. An opportunity came up to move into house building, into strategic land and land acquisition, which would be a very, very different skill set to what I had in consultancy. The acquisition side was completely new to me. And I had a mentor, a woman in property, who was in facilities management. So very, very different to what I'd trained in. And she was just incredible. She really encouraged me to think about those transferable skills that I had. So we touched on earlier about the project management skills, the communication skills, the fact that I'd built quite a really good network at that point. So I knew a lot of people in the sector that weren't necessarily just in planning. So she really encouraged me to take that leap of faith and to go into a different sector, which I honestly don't think I would have done. I wouldn't have had the confidence to do so if she hadn't supported me in that. And 10 years down the line, whilst I'm at a different house builder, it's something that, I'll never look back on. It was such a catalyst moment that helped me make that change. And that was all down to the mentoring program.
Was there one thing that she said that made a difference to you? Or would you say it was a succession of comments and experiences that you had with her that had made the overall impact?
Succession, definitely, because we probably met up for maybe a year, 18 months. And I already knew her before we were matched as well. So she was a good friend of mine who was just quite a lot more senior. I think it was that support that actually I could do it, and supported my self-belief that it was something that I did have the skills to do, even though I hadn't necessarily done it before. I would be able to use other skills that I'd learned to learn new skills.
Good. Who is there that you don't know so well that you would say is a mentor to you? Maybe male, maybe female, but who is it that you look up to and are like, yeah, this person has really made an impact on my life?
One that springs to mind, we at Barrett's have a Catalyst program for female leaders. Again, acknowledging that females do need support within the business. There are less role models. And through that program, that started in 2018, I did it in 2019 when I joined. I got matched with our regional finance director, and he has been really instrumental in just my career at Barrett's. So he would be one.
In what ways he helped you? Can you share anything there that would give an indication of how he has helped you? And the reason I'm asking this question is because there's a lot of men out there that really see the influence that they can have in a positive way on women, but are really quite unsure of what to do, and there's a real fear of them saying or doing the wrong thing, so that gets them to do nothing.
Yeah.
But if you've got someone that has had a really positive impact on you, my hope is that we can empower some of the men to try and help empower some of the women, because we all need encouraging, but just in different ways, right?
Yeah, very much so. And it's the whole male ally point, isn't it? It was slightly different type of mentoring. It was actually reverse mentoring, reciprocal mentoring. So the whole point was actually we were matched with more senior people, but so they could understand our perception and our perspectives moving up through the ranks and the business. So it was very much, we were both learning all the way through those male allies, and actually encouraging them to support and come to events. Lots of the time they actually find them more comfortable and more inviting and more friendly, and that's what we found with some of the events that we do at Women in Property. They're generally open to all. We have lots of male allies who support and sponsor our events, and would say just that actually the environment that we create is very, very supportive and inclusive.
So I'm interested to find out now what you think or what you have done for those people that you have mentored. What have you found a really effective way of mentoring a mentee? So we've spoken about you being a mentee.
Yeah.
In terms of when you are a mentor, how have you approached that in a way which is giving your mentee the best of you?
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question, because I would actually say I probably get a lot more out of being mentor than a mentee, because you learn so much from other people and their experiences. I've done different types of mentoring, and I think there's differences depending on what you're doing. So, for example, I've mentored people through their RICS and their RTPI charterships. So RTPI, World Town Planning Institute, and that is more goal driven in terms of it's to achieve chartership. So there's various stages throughout that, writing logbooks, writing a report, and having core competencies that you need to meet. That's very similar with the RICS as well. So there's a slightly different way of going about it because it's a little bit more stringent in terms of what you have to meet. So I think there's a lot more, I think you can be a lot more challenging and a lot more, there's a lot more emphasis on them being organised in terms to meet the deadlines, because it's very deadline driven. And I love planning, I love surveying and house building, but I'm really passionate about the other things: mentoring, outreach, student awards.
I'm interested now just to talk about some of the things that I think are unique to women in the workplace. And this is just my opinion, so please correct me if I am bonkers and I'm wrong. But women will predominantly, if there's an aging parent, take care of them. Women will predominantly, again, it's not in all cases, if there are children, take the lead on the care of the children. And so I'm interested to really get your views on what organisations can do to support women in a better way maybe than they do at the moment. And that's not because they're being negligent, but just because they're maybe not aware. So just looking at that, maybe there's someone listening here that wants to be a little bit reflective and think, well, I've got, so for me as an example, someone that works for me, her father is getting older. Of all of her siblings, she is the one that takes most care of him, and he's in his he's in his late 80s, and he has falls from time to time. He needs to go to hospital from time to time, and so the primary responsibility of that sits very much with her. So what are your thoughts on what you think that someone like me can do to make sure that I'm not just aware of the women that have got childcare responsibilities, but also the women that have got responsibilities for aging parents?
Yeah, and it's interesting you refer to women, which I think historically, because women picked up a lot of those other roles, I think, and traditionally women maybe have taken time out and then come back part-time. It's a role for everybody, and this is where we need to get to. It's educating everybody, and actually I think there's been some improvement since the pandemic, and the emphasis on people working at home more and it being more flexible. I think employers, we need to be more trusting of their employees as well, that actually as long as the job is done, you don't necessarily have to be at your desk 9 till 5 every day, as long as it's being achieved, as long as it's getting done. I think also making it more accepting that men can take responsibility for the childcare and the other caring responsibilities too, and that becoming more of the norm. I think some businesses are very good at it, but there's still a way to go, I think, in terms of actually the mindset's changing, that it is acceptable for a couple that they may both want to go back 4 days a week, but do the alternate days and the childcare in between. That will be a step in the right direction, because otherwise I think the industry is really struggling in terms of mid-career. We've done a lot on mid-career and losing women in this sector and other sectors, but I can talk more specifically on the built environment, that actually is not flexible enough.
And that's why women are leaving mid-career.
And that's why there are some women that are leaving mid-career. Site is a difficult one because it is less flexible. I think more office-based roles and sales-based roles can become more flexible. Site is a tricky one still. I think there's a long way to go there. I want to mention our building balance survey. We've recently done a building balance survey at Women in Property that Helen James has led on in our Southwest branch, which mainly on the childcare responsibilities rather than caring responsibilities. But I think, as you say, caring responsibilities is definitely within this, and I think that affects a larger part of the workforce. This is specifically to childcare, but actually the fact that the expense of childcare is just so instrumental in this too, and affecting people actually being able to go back to work and working flexibly.
So what do you think I could do as an employer to be more aware of this? I think when you talk about care responsibilities, whether it's a young child or whether it's an aging parent, care is care, right? In terms of it takes your time, it takes your heart as well as your mind. I think you raise a really good point about focusing on the end result. Does the job get done, as opposed to I want you to be here for this period of time. But I'm just wondering, what if you were to kind of give me like these, Darren, are the top 3 things that you need to be aware of or that you need to do to make sure that you're facilitating people, especially in their mid-career? Because this lady that works for me, she is bang smack in the middle of her career.
Yeah, I think as an employer and more senior people within businesses, I think they need to demonstrate that this is okay, that actually everyone can work flexibly, and just saying that can work flexibly and is one thing, but actually not sending the emails late at night, saying we're working flexibly, and everyone putting that into practice, and that everyone across the board to make it very inclusive. I think more support around those particular times, whether mentoring is helpful, but just acknowledging the fact that someone might just maybe not be working full time for a little bit. That doesn't mean that they're not going to come back, and this is probably a temporary situation. And the support whilst this is happening, and then the actual encouragement of them coming back.
I like that.
Yeah.
That works for me.
Yeah.
I can do that. I know what that looks like. Well, Jennifer, I think that we can go to the Demolition Zone. We are now in the Demolition Zone, and you have created an arrangement of bricks, I will call that, an assortment for those people that are not watching, that are listening. You have got you got 4, I'll be precise. You've got 4 mustard coloured bricks in amongst some wooden coloured bricks. Is that a wooden colour? Is that even a colour? I don't think it is. And then you've got three red bricks off to the side. So this is the most unique construction I have ever seen, and I am impressed. What does it represent?
Very good. So it represents a myth. So there's 3 red blocks there. The percentage, about 15% of females in the property and construction industry. I'll come on to the mustard yellow bricks in a moment, but it's all a myth specific to women in property, which is our women's only group, or our women's membership group is anti-men, or for women who need or lack confidence networking with men. And that's a myth I want to bust.
What do you mean by that? Can you just kind of break that down a little bit more?
So the organisation is to support women in an industry where there still are not that many female role models in very senior positions. Our unique mentoring program matches female to female across the built environment sector, so not planner to planner, architect to architect. So you have someone with a unique perspective in a more senior role than yourself. So it's based on role models. The mustard colour bricks are our male allies. So whilst it's a women's only membership, our events are very inclusive. We encourage everyone to attend our events. We encourage our male allies to attend our events as well. So that's what it represents.
So what you need is the acknowledgement and inclusion of the male allies. And just because I can't be a member, I can still come and participate in an event.
Absolutely.
I am an ally. I was going to say if I'm an ally, but I am an ally for sure. That is great. Good. Well, Jennifer, you can destroy this myth. With 2 hands, the bricks get destroyed from their original place. This is great. I love that myth, and I think that there are a number of people that can think or believe that women in property is a group of women that have got an attitude with men, that don't like men, that feel that men are the problem, but that's actually not the case at all.
Not at all.
What advice would you give to, I'm gonna get personal here. What advice would you give to my daughter? She's 16 years old, doing her GCSEs. There's about 4 or 5 different careers that she possibly could do. What advice would you give her?
Pursue things you enjoy, but also you're never too young to start building a network of people. And that starts with work experience. Go and shadow people. Reach out to people that you admire or you want to spend time with to understand what potential careers you could get involved in. That's been a massive part of my career, and I've been building my network since I was a graduate. And ultimately, if you start off trying to be friends with people, 5-10 years down the line, those people are in those places making those decisions. It's people I work with now that I met a long time ago, and that was all that groundwork. So that's one. Reach out to supporters, try and get a mentor. Again, you can never be too young. You can always learn from other people's experiences, and that works both ways. Everyone has something to give back to someone else, or has experiences to share that will make someone think differently about something and actually think, I'm going to do that differently.
I like that. She will listen to this podcast and she will take that advice for sure. Yeah, 100% she will. Yeah, she will. Jennifer, it's been great having you here today as a guest on the podcast. Appreciate your wisdom, your perspective, and your passion.